Well, good evening, IFL Nation, and welcome back to the Midweek Madness as we prepare for Week 9 of the Indoor Football League season. It is hard to believe that we are on the cusp of double digits for week numbers. Just seemed like the season started yesterday. I know I've been saying that for the past couple of weeks, but we've been treated to a stellar season so far. Lots of surprises, wow moments. Couldn't ask for anything more from the season so far. And the best part, we have over half of it remaining. For those of you who are just tuning in to the IFL now, or my channel specifically, let me first say, welcome aboard, and welcome to Week 9 of Wager Wednesday in the Indoor Football League season. My name is Alex Schuberth. I am a huge fan of the Indoor Football League. I am an IFL contributor for Sports Coast to Coast. That is a Pacific Northwest-based sports forum site that specializes in coverage of the Indoor Football League and its member teams specifically. If you want game previews, recaps, team-by-team roster breakdowns, make Sports to Coast your go-to destination for all of that news and information. I've put the URL in the description to this video. Definitely check it out. You'll also find within there the written version of my weekly Wager Wednesday posts. So we have that out of the way. Let's dive into the presentation segment of this thing. All righty, so here we are, Week 9 of the IFL season. Promises to be a good one after a really, really memorable Week 8, which had highlights in and of itself that we'll get to right now. So the recurring theme of Week 8, we had underdogs picking up where they left off on Week 7 with their dominant ways. Moneyline Magic is appearing to finally get off the ground after a rough start to the season. And the overs. We had all 6 games of the week go above their projected point total for the first time all season, effectively serving as a perfect counterattack to the oops all unders that Week 2 gave us. The underdogs were 7-1 against the, 5-1 against the spread this week. They were 7-1 against the spread the week before. But what makes this week different for them is that 4 of those covers involved outright wins. So we fortunately had the chance of picking 2 of those underdog teams outright, but we also had 2 under bets, which regardless of which game you picked, the under certainly didn't hit for any of those. So we'll go through each of those games specifically and recap those quickly. And we'll get to some more year-to-date season trends with team-specific analysis as well. And once we make our way through all of that, we'll do our single game picks for Week 9. We have another beautiful 8-game slate in front of us. A pair of games Friday, followed by 6 games Saturday that are pretty scattered about throughout the day instead of all being all at once. We'll get to those as well. And we'll also take a stab at a 3-leg parlay, which out of 7 tries so far, we haven't hit one yet. We've gotten within 1 leg 5 different times. So I'm telling you, we are just scratching the surface. I feel like this is the week where we are due. So we will see what happens with that. We'll go through futures forecast and trends, see which teams are up and down from last week and the preseason for that matter. And then ESPN Bet I touched upon a little bit last week. I haven't had the chance yet to see if lines are available there. Maybe that's something that we can do near the tail end of tonight's session. So there we have our Week 8 results. Unfortunately, those 2 money line hits that we had were our only wins. We got surprised by both Friday results. Green Bay at -10 and Tulsa at -13.5. Neither of those favorites ended up winning their games. let alone covering. And what makes it crazy is that both of their opponents entered this with a winless 0-5 record. As far as Green Bay goes, they were just hit by a bombshell between Sioux Falls' defense, which really showed out, along with the return of Lorenzo Brown at quarterback. The Sioux Falls Storm finally get back to that feel that they had when they made that surprise run last year all the way to the IFL championship game where they were ultimately the runners-up. But Sioux Falls, they played a great game. They earned their first win against a really solid Green Bay team. That was a 46-38 affair. As for Tulsa, I don't know what it is about playing at road versus playing at home for them, because they definitely fell to this trap game. The Sharks are a team that doesn't really have that many possessions per game compared to the rest of the league. But my gosh, they were efficient with the drives that they had last Friday. They ended up getting touchdowns on all 4 of their second half possessions, and that really put Tulsa behind the 8 ball. The score indicates a much closer game than it really was. The Oilers did get a touchdown as time expired late, but the Sharks go on the road. They pick up their first win, 47-44, and the Oilers drop back to 500. Frisco at San Antonio, we picked the under for that game, expecting a little bit of a different game plan than what we saw in the team's first meeting the week before. But I suppose the more things are different, the more things stay the same. We had the second game of this doubleheader outscore, believe it or not, the first game that ended 54-52 Gunslingers. And despite having TJ Edwards leave due to injury, behind Larry Harrington, the Fighters still got 62 points, which is a season high for them. And with that effort, they shoot past the Gunslingers 62-57. They get back in the win column and avoid their first in-season multi-game losing streak in the process. So San Antonio will spend this week trying to bounce back. Quad City in Iowa, we kind of mentioned this earlier, but Iowa got the win. It was not easy, though. They had a 28-point lead in the third quarter and very nearly blew it. Quad City did not give up. Full credit to them. And they got this to within 2 points. And they were an onside kick away inside the 1-minute warning from really making things interesting for what probably would have been the largest comeback in IFL recorded history. But alas, it was not to be. Iowa gets the win. We got our plus odds money line groove going, 55-53. The Barnstormers prevailing in that one. And the big game of Saturday night, Vegas and Bay Area, 2 teams putting 5-0 records on the line, one of which had to walk away with the loss, and it was not going to be the Vegas Nighthawks, folks. Jerome Johnson played absolutely out of his mind. The Bay Area Panthers, surprisingly, had no answers despite boasting a top 2, top 3 defense in the league entering this one. And Bay Area's got a little bit of a decision to make. I know we've been saying that for the past few weeks, but the shuffle between Daquan Neal and Felix Harper is almost counterproductive for them. Almost to the lines of when you have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. So it's going to be interesting to see what Bay Area does in response to getting the doors blown open on them. Vegas winning 62-43, and it is the Nighthawks who are the last undefeated team in the IFL. Wonder what the hypothetical odds would have been on a prop bet of that nature. And the last game that we had on Sunday, the Northern Arizona Wranglers and San Diego Strike Force, and this game caught a whole bunch of steam from about midway through the second quarter to deep into the fourth quarter. We just had touchdown after touchdown after touchdown. 7 straight possessions ended in touchdowns, and that really saw this thing through for all the overbetters. In the end, San Diego pulled out in front. They got a key turnover in the fourth when they needed it the most, and they end up prevailing 54-45 to draw level with the Wranglers in the standings. Both teams now stand at 4-2 apiece. So those are our Week 8 results, our year-to-date stuff right below that table. And things don't look particularly great right now. We are underneath our plus 500 goal in all 3 of our bet types. But for what it's worth, we got both our money line bets correct last week. So we brought from a 2-6 record to a 4-6 record. So definitely much closer. And the more that we get on those money line hits, that's going to be a massive help for our bottom line moving forward. We are just below 500 on spreads, 6-8 on the over-unders, which is a little bit discouraging after we started 4-0 on over-under predictions. It's just been a stretch of bad luck and honestly a few selections that probably should have been more shrewd on my end. But again, each week offer us a clean slate, so we'll have to see how we're able to get back on track with those. Between the flat method and the weighted method of betting, we're right around a negative 10% ROI right now, which had that strong 9-5 start in the first 3 weeks of the season. This could be really downward spiraling for us right now. So it's been rough. The past 5 weeks of the season have not been the kindest in the world. But honestly, we're not in too bad of a spot to still accomplish a lot of our preseason goals. But we've got to make some moves quick here. So I'm hoping that with more and more games being played, the more refined our data and our predictions will be going forward. And we can see the year-to-date returns by both dollar figures and by ROI. So we're still hovering below. We're still hovering in the red, if you will. But all it takes is 1 or 2 really strong weeks to get us back to where we want to be. So again, hoping that this week is the start of that special run. So year to date, overs are 26 and 21 on the season following a perfect showing last week. Every team in the league has had at least 2 games go over. 4 teams are at that minimum threshold: Green Bay, Bay Area, Tucson, and Duke City. We have teams with 4 overs: San Diego, Tulsa, Quad City, and Sioux Falls. And with their game last week, Frisco and San Antonio are now both 5-1 to the over. And as far as the spread goes, with underdogs spending the past 2 weeks amassing a record of 12-2, they now have a 26-21 advantage against the spread. I'm not sure what the ROI would be if you had put all of your money on the underdogs on the spread, but it would be absolutely ridiculously massive. And every team in the league has at least 2 against the spread wins. And with San Diego covering at 4.5 as 4.5 point favorites last week, they are the only undefeated team against the spread. And between home and road on the handicap, home teams have a slight edge: 24 wins, 23 losses. And even with 4 underdogs outright winning a week ago, favorites are still decisively out in front. This is perhaps not a particular surprise, but on the year so far, favorites are still converting at about a 73% rate. and there's slight home field advantage, all things considered, with 25 home teams winning outright on 47 opportunities. So, again, we take a look at these trends, we bear them in mind with our picks, see if they can hopefully help lead us to some surprising winners where not a lot of people think that there might be. All right, disclaimer time. I went over this a little bit last week. I am still using DraftKings as my primary source of results analysis, though once ESPN Bet does get all of their money line bets available for all games, I will incorporate those back into my written piece once those become live, which if the past couple weeks are any indication, ESPN Bet typically puts out their lines sometime on Thursday. So keep an eye out for those if you are happening to using ESPN Bet as your platform over DraftKings or another sportsbook in your jurisdiction. But I have that there to let you guys know so that we have as much complete info as possible on a week-to-week basis. So again, my weekly reminder, this is not for money. This is for entertainment and to see if our model and our kind of way of thinking through these games in terms of projections, how does that hold up? That really is the primary goal of this series. And if we happen to make money, in theory, that's a nice added bonus. You are more than welcome to tail my bets with me if you dare, but please do so at your own risk. Spend only what you can afford to lose. Practice safe gaming habits. If you or a loved one is having trouble with problem gaming, there are a lot of resources that you can refer to, and I highly encourage that you take advantage of those. HaveAGamePlan.org, a really good example of one. So with that all being said, time to look at some lines. Up here we go, a full 8-game slate. Absolutely beautiful. File that under things you love to see. So we have 2 games on Friday evening. We start off with an 8:05 game. The Quad City Steamwheelers facing off against the Sioux Falls Storm. And odds makers like the Storm in this game, despite the 1-5 straight up record. They're 1.5 favorites over their local rivals. The over-under is set at 91.5. Both teams laying money on the money line low. Quad City laying a couple cents and Sioux Falls at minus 118. And there were a couple different ways that I looked at this game, to be honest with you. The first way that I looked at it is I look at both teams, kind of what they've done the past few weeks. And I figure, okay, Quad City, they had a bit of a slow start to the season offensively, and there still might be a little bit of a quarterback thing between Judd Erickson and Mike Irwin. But the reality of the fact is that Quad City's put up over 50 points in each of their first 3 games, and that's helped lead them to 4 consecutive games in which games involving the Steamwheelers made the over. And as for Sioux Falls, again, they looked just so dominant in that game against the Green Bay Blizzard, riding that run game that really propelled them to the championship last year. I think it was Lorenzo Brown had 3 rushing touchdowns. Billy Hall had a couple as well before he was riding the pine. But as tempted as I am to take the over on this single game bet, I just know for a fact that I'm going to be the one to single-handedly snap the over losing streak and perhaps become the most unpopular figure on YouTube within the IFL community if I do wind up doing that and the game ends like 35-24. So what I'm going to do here instead is take a look at the overall season series history dating back to 2022. 6 of the 7 games in this series has been won outright by the home team. And this is a rivalry game where that sort of statistic, even though it kind of lives in its own vacuum sometime, it does matter. And now we have a game between these two teams where the home team historically has had unparalleled success. And the fact that we only have to lay 1.5 on the home team is an absolutely attractive proposition here. Sioux Falls is clearly different with Lorenzo Brown under center. Assuming that Andre Fields keeps him in there and tosses him the keys to the car, I think Sioux Falls could go on a little bit of a run here to put themselves back into the playoff conversation. And Quad City, though they have had some answers on the offensive side of the ball, defensively, it's been a little bit of a struggle for them. And they have already lost 3 times as outright favorites. They did have an underdog win against Massachusetts, but come on, it's the Pirates. They were on the road. Everybody knows how that game was going to pan out. So with this game, I'm predicting Sioux Falls to cover here. They've covered in each of their last 2 games, and I am banking on them to make it a third. Sioux Falls at minus 1.5 is my play. Game 2, San Diego, Vegas, 10:05 in Henderson. This could be a matchup within the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. Vegas is laying 12.5 as the home favorite, with the over-under set at exactly 98 points. No money line is available on DraftKings at the moment. And to be honest, guys, let's call this for what it is. Vegas is the number 1 team in the IFL right now. They score at the highest clip in the league. Their defense is top 3. And when both of those pieces are hitting their stride, nobody else even comes close. Maybe Frisco, maybe Bay Area, but we saw Bay Area Vegas last week, and that turned out to be a laugher in favor of Vegas. Their past 4 wins have averaged over a 20-point margin of victory. So that begs the question, when is their letdown game going to be? When does something happen where either an injury or just something doesn't quite click right during the game? At what point does that happen to Vegas? Because it's happened to every team to this point, and I feel like that's going to happen in this game right here. Especially with the way that the underdogs have just dominated so far this season. And I look at San Diego, and I look at Nate Davis, and I look at this point spread. Are you trying to tell me that a Nate Davis-led team is going to get outscored by nearly 2 touchdowns? No. I absolutely fail to see a scenario where that happens. Granted, San Diego does not have their full supporting cast of receivers. Arthur Jackson III and Hoodie Rogers are still serving their suspensions. They've got 2 games left on those as a result of the fiasco in their second Bay Area game a couple weeks ago. But the strike force proved that against a Wrangler defense that had been playing really good ball recently, kind of didn't matter. They still put up 54 points, and Nate Davis is still one of the best pure passers in the game. And if they can incorporate Chance Bell in that running game as well, this could evolve into a shootout, which hence is why the over-under stands as the highest of the week. But San Diego is 6-0 on the spread. This handicap suits them very well to bring that to a 7-0 record. So I'm taking the points with the visiting dogs, Strike force strikes. And now we go to our 6-game Saturday. No shortage of action. It is going to be a blast for essentially the entire day. We get things kicked off at 2:05 Eastern with Jacksonville taking on Frisco. The Fighters laying 17 with an over-under set at 87 points on the dot. And unsurprisingly, no money line bet is available. Now, I must take a step back here and concede. This entire analysis depends on TJ Edwards and his availability to play. He left in the first half of last week's game against San Antonio. Reportedly, it was an injury to his non-throwing wrist or arm area. And it supposedly had him in a sling while Larry Harrington finished the job as the backup quarterback in Frisco's win. So Edwards' health is going to be a key contributing factor. We might learn a little bit more once the transactions page comes up with the TJ Edwards update. But as of now, I didn't see anything there. I didn't have the chance to check tonight before hopping on this, but what can you do? Even if Edwards does not play, I still like Harrington enough at quarterback, even though the short sample size was against San Antonio's defense, to where I still think Frisco holds their end of the bargain and puts points up on the board. I think they've scored at least 49 in each of their last 5 games. So their ability to score is not questioned, regardless of who's under center. For Jacksonville, they're probably going to have to wind up scoring to keep up in this game. And right now, they're hitting a real nice stride offensively with Fred Payton at quarterback. They have another Payton at wide receiver, along with Cameron Solomon and Tamarion Terry. Things are coming together nicely for that Sharks offense, and they've got a little bit of momentum that they'll hope to kind of keep going here. In the end, the pick that I'm choosing for this is over 87 points. A couple reasons why I like this here. Number one is that each of Frisco's last 5 games and each of Jacksonville's last 3 games have all exceeded this number. And the second reason is because we don't have the hook involved, we have a whole number for this point total. All we have to do is get to 87 points. And worst case scenario, we would push, which, full disclosure, would be a first on this Wager Wednesday series. Not often do we get point spreads or over-unders at exact numbers. And it's even more rare to have both bet types be whole point values. But that's what we have here. We're looking at something like mid 50s to high 30s to get us across here. And the way that these offenses are humming right now, I absolutely think that's doable. So then again, if both Friday games go over and this one goes under, again, my sincerest apologies to fans that love scoring in the game. But I'm sticking by it. Jacksonville Frisco over 87. Next game, at 4:05 Eastern, the Tulsa Oilers trying to bounce back against the Green Bay Blizzard. This is a really interesting matchup. Green Bay's laying 7.5. Over-under is set at 84.5. Tulsa going for plus 215 on the money line, and Green Bay minus 265. Very interesting game because both teams last week were double-digit favorites and couldn't even outright win. So they're both going to come out with something to prove. And if you followed my column for any varying stretch of time this season, you'll notice a lot of my picks have backed Green Bay this season. I genuinely believe that they have a really, really good team. Their offense has kind of regressed a little bit, as has their defense. So it'll be interesting to see if they're able to get both of those units back on track to the level that they were playing at the beginning of this season. As for Tulsa, who exactly knows what the Tulsa Oilers are right now? They've spent the past month genuinely confusing pretty much any IFL fan, let alone their own fans back in Oklahoma. Their past 2 road games, all convincing wins. Their past 2 home games, all atrocious duds. Sounding a little bit familiar here? I'm getting serious 2023 Tucson Sugar Skulls vibe from this Tulsa Oilers team. And that's something that we can absolutely leverage to our advantage. If Tulsa's able to kind of set the tone here, make a few plays in the first quarter, kind of get the juices flowing, I do like the possibility of an upset bid. We've seen how their offense can operate at a really high efficiency, and Green Bay is going to be a tough matchup there, don't get me wrong. But I do very much like an upset special here. And like I said earlier, we're going to have to get aggressive with these selections. If we were in basically an opposite scenario where we had 26 wins, 21 losses on the season, I might lean more towards Tulsa on the handicap here. 7.5 is a really good number, but I'm sticking with money line here. I have a feeling about this game. It's going to be a good one. It's probably going to come down to less than that touchdown. And we're going to put it all on the table here. Tulsa, outright win. The first of 2 8:05 p.m. games. The Massachusetts Pirates coming off a bye. They draw the Iowa Barnstormers in Day 1, looking to put together a winning streak, something that they failed to do last season. As the home underdogs, Iowa's getting 10.5. The over-under is set at 82 exactly. No money line bet is available. The Pirates should have Alejandro Benefield back after 2 weeks ago seeing Connor Dagenhart take the start after Benefield was a surprise inactive. But he's still going to be working with an abbreviated supporting cast with Isaac Zico on long-term injured reserve. So offense is going to have to come from other sources for the Pirates. Jimmy Robinson, Tavion Thomas, the other running back, Thomas Owens, longtime veteran, always reliable. And we'll have to see in the second week of his second stint with the Pirates how Darren Carrington is able to adjust. Another really good receiver that the Pirates have had for the past 3 years, including in their championship season back in 2021. And Iowa, got to give them credit. They've been actually playing really good football for the past few weeks. They have covered in the last 3. Granted, 2 of those were backdoor covers. But it reflects how competitive and legitimate that their progress has been since their last meeting with the Pirates back in early April. And you're probably knowing where this is going. You know what I'm about to say next. It's the streak. And you know precisely what I'm talking about when I say the streak. The Pirates on the road 0-12 against the spread. Does that continue here? You bet your bottom dollar that it does. Put it this way. The last time that the Massachusetts Pirates won a game on the road in double digits, It was July 2022 against a 1-win Bay Area Panthers team. And the one before that was a few weeks prior in mid-June of 2022 when the Pirates beat Sioux Falls at Denny Sanford Premier Center 69-55. So it has been a good long while since the Pirates have put up a road game anywhere near the level of expectation, both from the books and their fan base alike. But 10.5 is too high of a number, in my opinion. So I have absolutely no hesitation going with the Barnstormers to convert at this number. They might even outright win if they can catch Massachusetts by surprise like they did in last year's game in Day 1, in which the Barnstormers won by 30. 8:05, the second game, San Antonio and Duke City. We have San Antonio as 6.5-point favorites on the road. The over-under is not showing up there. So, there it is. Awesome. The over-under is set at 93.5. San Antonio is minus 245 money line, and Duke City plus 200. And for those of you who may not have heard the news, the Gladiators have brought in a new quarterback after the Alfonso Howard experiment basically lasted only a full quarter until he started taking swings at team trainers. So he's gone. Jeremy Hickbottom's gone. Starting quarterback is expected to be Joey Mancuso, who Nighthawk fans are probably familiar with because he spent the past 2 seasons starting in various degrees for Vegas. And honestly, for the most part, it wasn't high ceiling stuff for Mancuso, but he can hardly do worse than anything else that the Gladiators have put in at quarterback right now. They're a desperate team. They're looking for their first win. They are the only winless team left in the IFL. And this is a tough assignment going up against San Antonio. This team just absolutely scores points at will. The defense has not been good. In fact, last in the league at 57 points against per game. So for Mancuso, this is as good of an opportunity as it gets to elevate Duke City's offense to some sort of ceiling. And for Duke City's defense, it's a good test to see how they stack up against San Antonio, because for the most part, Duke City's defense is about league average right now, which is really impressive considering how often the offense puts them behind the 8 ball. So a lot of bets look really appealing to me. You could probably go San Antonio straight up with just a simple punt play. I'm not fully confident yet in laying a touchdown to the Gunslingers because I need to see them with more defensive efficiency first before I gain that much confidence in them. To me, 93.5 on the over is the play. I want to say every single San Antonio game has wound up above this number. We don't need Duke City to go absolutely nuclear here. That job is going to go to San Antonio. They've scored at least 50 points in 5 of their 6 games, looking like easily the most lethal offense in the IFL. Between Castronova and their other offensive skill position players, this team is just a nightmare to try to defend. And they've proven that it's no fluke. So if they get high 50s and Duke City can manage low 40s with Mancuso settling in at quarterback and taking advantage of a good matchup, this is a reasonably solid play here. So give me San Antonio, Duke City over 93.5. Again, involving a San Antonio Gunslinger team that was pretty much made in the lab for the specific purpose of cashing overs on a week-to-week basis. All right, 9:05, Bay Area, Northern Arizona. The defending champs coming off their first loss of the season last week. They're still getting some confidence from odds makers. They are 3-point favorites on the road. You are laying 15 cents on the dollar with backing Bay Area. That might make Northern Arizona +3 a little bit more of an attractive bet if you are to go with that. The over-under is set at 89.5. On the money line, Bay Area is -155 and Northern Arizona is +130. And I am really looking forward to seeing how this game develops because, in a sense, it's between two teams, one with a little bit of an identity crisis brewing and another that knows exactly who they are and what their top form looks like to them. I honestly couldn't tell you for the Bay Area Panthers if they're starting Daquan Neal or Felix Harper. Flip a coin, choose your man. Honestly, you're probably going to get the same product out of either guy at this point. For the Wranglers, you know that you have Josh Jones at quarterback. You have RZ McCorker making absolutely mind-bending plays. You have Travion Banks on the defense doing his usual thing as a first-team All-IFLer. I spell an upset here. I spell an upset with Northern Arizona winning outright. They won this game at Findlay Toyota Center last year by a score of 35-34. So there is a track record that sustains any belief or assertion that the Wranglers can send Bay Area to a second straight loss. It's going to be a grind. If Northern Arizona wins, the game probably stays under 89.5. But we're going to go for another money line hit here. Plus odds. We got 2 last week. Let's see if Northern Arizona can send us to 2 this week. So give me Naz. Outright win. Last 9:05 game, Arizona and Tucson. Battle in the Sun Devil State. Arizona getting 6.5 as their point spread as favorites. Laying the 6.5. Over-under is set at 87.5. And Arizona's -250 money line, whereas Tucson is +205. Some pretty big news coming out of Tucson is that Malik Mitchell, after a 2-game absence plus a bye week, is expected to be ready to go in this game, which is a massive boost to the Sugar Skulls offense that was looking to be among the league's very best before Mitchell reportedly suffered that injury that kind of caught people by surprise before the Sugar Skulls game against San Antonio about a month ago. And they're going to have to play with some desperation here. They've got multiple teams that they have to chase down in the standings. And a lot of those teams, perhaps even all 4 of those teams in the top 4, don't look like they're going to be surrendering anytime soon. So the Sugar Skulls know what's at stake, as does Arizona, currently on the outside looking in, despite a couple straight wins to get themselves back up to 500. Dalton Sneed did make his return to the lineup. He led Arizona to a 55-35 win against Jacksonville last week. And you figure as he gets more reps coming back from that multi-week absence, that the reins are going to be coming off a little bit with figuring out what plays that you can call with him at the helm. This is going to be a really fun game, I think. Neither defense really jumps off the page when looking at this game. And I feel like it's one where Mitchell in his first start back might show a little bit of rust and maybe opening the door for Arizona to make a couple of key plays defensively. They kind of got back to that in the fourth quarter of the Jacksonville game. And they've had an entire 2 weeks to kind of prepare for really any possibility that Tucson throws at them. It's going to take 1 or 2 stops for Arizona, but I do believe that at 6.5, that they can cover this spread on the road. It feels like almost a similar path that they took last year, where they were below 500 after 6, 7, 8 weeks, whatever it was. And then they started on their heater that brought them to number 1 in the conference in advance of that postseason. I'm not sure if we see a repeat of that here, simply because there are a lot of insanely talented teams out west. It's decisively the more competitive conference of the two, in my opinion. But aside from that fact, I like the way Arizona's playing right now. And I think they make enough plays to get this job done on the road. So Arizona lay 6.5, and we'll see what happens. We will make our way back up here, where we will construct our 3-leg parlay of the week. This is now our 8th try at the treble, and still looking for our first hit, but hoping that the recent trends that lead to these picks will eventually bring us to the promised land. We'll start with my first leg, Friday night game. I made mention of this during the Quad City Sioux Falls analysis, but I do like the idea of this game going over. Quad City's been scoring at a ridiculous clip. Sioux Falls offense looks like it has a really good ceiling with Lorenzo Brown under center. And we just got to hope that this over streak continues, guys. I just have that dreading feeling that I'm going to be the one that snaps it. But if I am to snap it, I would much rather have it be the losing leg of a parlay than a loss on my single game bet. But either way, this number is attainable. Both teams getting to the mid-40s should be easily accomplishable. The next game that I'm going to choose is Jacksonville against Frisco. And surprise, surprise, I'm going to take the Sharks here. I just feel like this handicap is a little bit too high. We have only had 2 favorites out of 9 that have been double-digit favorites actually cover. The highest of which being 14.5 when Massachusetts defeated a down-and-out Iowa team that had, just in that game, benched DJ Peterson in favor of their current starter, Kyle King. But Sharks plus 17, as long as they're able to keep up offensively, this looks really good. And as we saw last week, if Jacksonville gets off to one of those weird 7-0, 14-0 starts, we're pretty much right there already, barring a total second half collapse. The third leg, I look at Arizona Tucson, and I think this game goes over. 87.5, in my opinion, is way too low. My model has this game projected at around the 93, 94 point threshold, especially with the return of both starting quarterbacks to those respective lineups, coupled with the fact that neither defense is really even league average right now, let's be honest. I think Arizona gives up somewhere along the bottom 5 in points per game, where Tucson ranks second worst only to San Antonio. So this game is set up perfectly for this game to potentially even flirt with triple digits by the time that it's all said and done. So with 3 legs, each at minus 110, a $10 wager would give us a maximum payout potential of $69.57. Note with this one, that if Frisco wins their game by exactly 17 points, the second of these 3 legs would void, which would result in an abbreviated payout, which would wind up being about $36.44. If that's how that play unfolded, and of course, assuming that Quad City and Sioux Falls makes its over. So, is this the triplet that finally winds up a winner for us? I'm hoping so, but we will see what happens. And now a look at our futures forecast, which, perhaps unsurprisingly, we have a new leader atop this leaderboard. The Vegas Nighthawks now sitting at plus 225 to win the IFL championship, which, by the way, would be in their home arena, assuming that they can make their way to the playoffs, win the first 2 games. They get rewarded with what would essentially be a home game in the IFL championship, with that spectacle taking place at Lee's Family Forum. So that's a notable development that knocks Bay Area to the second shortest odds at plus 400. And everything else seems pretty tiered. Clear separation between the San Diego, Arizona group, along with San Antonio and Green Bay. And then the bottom 4 teams, even though 3 of them got their first wins of the season, clearly still have a long way to go to making the playoffs, let alone winning the IFL championship. But very interesting, because in the preseason, you could have gotten Vegas at, I think they were either plus 2,200 or plus 2,500. So if you made a bet on DraftKings preseason, your cash out option is probably like 6 or 7 times your original stake. So it makes a very interesting decision, the classic cash out or let it ride scenario. But yeah, Vegas and San Diego, again, definitely the biggest winners of the season so far. Teams like Jacksonville and Tucson, probably the 2 biggest losers. Jacksonville starting at plus 1,000 to win the championship, and Tucson, I want to say they were plus 800 actually. So the season hasn't really gone as expected for either of those 2 teams. But there's still time to turn it around. We've got 9-10 games left in the season. Anything can happen between now and mid-July once we have a firm view of who our 8 playoff teams are and what paths will await them en route to a potential appearance in the championship game in Henderson on August 17th. So with that, that is going to wrap it up for week 9 of Wager Wednesday. I know I went a little bit beyond my usual time here. I appreciate you all sticking with me and taking some time out of your day to hear me out on some IFL data analysis and predictions on the betting lines. So again, thank you for tuning in. We'll catch you over the weekend, and I will see you at the cashier. Have a great night, everybody.